Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I thought today I would do my February wrap-up for you. So I had not the best reading month in February. I only read 4 books, and 2 of them were graphic novels. So I read 2 novels, 2 graphic novels. I'm currently reading 2 books, which I'll mention at the end. And then I'll just give more details on them in my March wrap-up, assuming I actually finish them. But anyways, I'll just get into it. So the first book I read was the first graphic novel, and that was Habibi by Craig Thompson. I think I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It's quite a large graphic novel. I read it in one afternoon though while I was sick this month. It follows 2 refugees who are slaves, and it's just a really interesting look at refugee stories, and also drawing similarities between Christianity and Islam. So I think those are probably 2 really important themes to look at in today's world. The book was overall really enjoyable. I really liked the artwork. It's just black and white, but it's quite enjoyable to look at while you're reading. One of the reviews I read was complaining about Craig Thompson's, I don't want to say obsession, but the amount that he draws the female form and breasts in particular, and the lack of male nudity in his books. I have to say I didn't really notice it when I was reading it, but after reading the review I was like, yeah, that's right, there are a lot of breasts in this book, and not so much male nudity. I personally don't have an issue with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I don't know, I thought that was a pretty interesting critique that had absolutely nothing to do with the story, but I guess it's a critique of the art. And I guess kind of thinking about it, it does kind of have something to do with the story, the female nudity. It follows a girl who kind of becomes like a consort to a king, and so she's kind of, I guess, like a sexual slave to him in a way, and she bears his child. And then the male character, I hope this isn't giving away too many spoilers, but the male refugee that it follows becomes a eunuch. So thinking about it, I can understand the kind of critique in the expression of female nudity but not male nudity, since it is a relatively important aspect of both their stories. You'd think that the depiction of it would be fairly equal, but it's not. It's really not at all. There are a lot of female forms and not so much male, but I don't know that it detracts from the story necessarily, but it would have been nice to have it depicted more fairly, I guess. Anyways, I gave this one about 4 out of 5 stars, and I'd highly recommend it. He also wrote Blankets, which is a really good coming of age love story that I'd also really recommend. The next book that I picked up was actually for cozy reading night, I believe, and that was The Fate of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. I was so looking forward to this book. I love the first 2 books in the trilogy, the first one in particular. The second one was a little bit lacking for me, but the first book I loved. I really enjoyed the world, I really liked the characters, and I was really looking forward to reading the final book in the trilogy. And I loved most of it, honestly. I loved most of it more than I liked the second book, except for about the last 50 pages. I thought Johansson kind of took the easy way out in ending the story, and giving a happy ending, or maybe an attempt at giving the right ending but not a completely happy ending for the heroine, which I don't have anything wrong with. It doesn't have to be a completely happy ending for it to be an enjoyable book. I just thought it was the easy way out. So I'm not going to give any spoilers, but if you haven't read the trilogy, it follows Kelsey, who becomes queen of this kingdom called the Tearling, and she inherits 2 sapphires that give her magical abilities to look into the past of her kingdom and kind of see its history and its development, and she uses these powers to not only learn about her kingdom's past, but to determine the best way to protect and resolve the issues that her kingdom is having currently. I'm sitting somewhere between 3.5 and 4 stars for this book. I think I'll probably give it 3.5 in the end, just because I didn't enjoy the ending and I thought it was a really poor way to end the trilogy, even though like 80% of this book I loved. But yeah, I'd highly recommend that you pick up the trilogy. You might not have the same issues with the ending that I do. It is quite enjoyable. They're fast-paced reads. They follow a good female heroine. So yeah, I'd recommend this one, even though I didn't love the ending. The next novel I read was the PostBirthday World by Lionel Shriver. I wanted to pick this up because Mercedes over at Mercy's Bookish Musings was mentioning it on her podcast with Lauren from Lauren and the Books. I think it's called Books and Blankets Podcast. And she made it sound really interesting, and it is really interesting. Lionel Shriver is a great writer. She writes, her characters are very well written, very well developed. She writes human emotion really well, and the concept is really interesting. So it follows this woman who's in a long-term relationship with her partner. They've been together for 10 years, but they're not married. And she finds herself in this situation where she is with an acquaintance one evening, and she finds herself very attracted to him, and she has to decide whether she wants to start up an affair with him or not. And then after the first chapter, every chapter alternates back and forth between a world where she decides to have an affair and a world where she decides not to have an affair. So it's a really interesting concept, and like I said, Lionel Shriver writes human emotions very well, particularly for the main character, Irina, I think her name is. So like you get to see kind of her, like her lust, her remorse, her regret, her grieving, her longing, her loneliness. She writes all those emotions really well. And it's definitely a quick, fast-paced read. But again, I was just kind of disappointed with the ending, and I had some issues with it throughout. But I'll talk about the issues I had with it more in my review, which I'll do sometime in March, I think. But yeah, generally I liked it. I did like Lionel Shriver's writing, and I will be picking up one of her other books that I have, which is We Need to Talk About Kevin. So I'll be picking that up soon, so hopefully. But yeah, I think I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And then the last book that I actually finished as of filming this anyways, it's February 26th this morning, so hopefully I can actually finish at least one more book before the end of the month. But anyways, the last book as of filming that I actually finished was another graphic novel, and that's Paper Girls by Brian K. Vaughan. I'm not sure where I heard about this. I think I just kind of came across it when I was searching for stuff on Amazon, and it was in my recommended reads, I think. And I like Brian K. Vaughan's work, so I looked into it a little bit more. And a lot of the reviews were saying that it's a lot like Stranger Things on Netflix, but with 4 girls as opposed to boys. And I can see the similarities. It takes place in the 80s, and it's kind of, there's no real adult presence. It just kind of follows these 4 teenagers, not even teenagers, like preteens, like they're about 12 years old. It follows them just trying to solve, I guess, the mystery or the crime that's going on in their neighborhood. It is science fiction. It is enjoyable. The artwork's good. I like it. It's all very tonal, lots of pinks and blues, like on the cover here. Yeah, I didn't love the story in the first issue. I think the premise is really interesting. I'm gonna pick up the next volume to see where Brian K. Vaughan goes with it. But I'd recommend giving this one a try. I gave this 3 stars. It wasn't the strongest first volume that I've read in a graphic novel series, but I'll keep going with it because I do like the premise, and I like the idea of following 4 heroines, so we'll see how that one goes. And then I just wanted to mention the 2 books that I'm currently reading. One of them is The Tempest by William Shakespeare. I started reading this for cozy reading night as well, and I read the first act during cozy reading night and then I just didn't pick it up again. So I'm hoping to actually finish this today. I don't know how I feel about it. I have a hard time reading Shakespeare as an adult. I read quite a lot in high school, but I really haven't picked up Shakespeare in probably about 10 years. So it's hard for me to get into the language and the flow. What I ended up doing was reading a summary of what the plot of the play is, just so I could follow it a little bit better when I'm actually reading it. And to be honest, the only reason I'm actually reading the play is because I want to read Hagseed by Margaret Atwood, which is a modern retelling. I'm actually reading that in March for my book club, so I'd like to read the play first, just to kind of see what she's basing her writing on. So yeah, I don't know what I'll end up rating this, or even if I will end up rating it at all, just because I don't know that I could give it a fair rating. I don't think I could critique it fairly just because I'm not close reading it. Anyways, so yeah, hopefully I will finish this before the end of the month. I will let you know in March how it goes. And then the other book that I picked up that I'm only 30 pages in. I would have loved to finish this before the end of the month, but I don't think I will, but maybe we'll see. But anyways, that's I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. This is just a thriller. As of right now, it's following a woman who is walking home with her son from school, and he gets hit by a car and is killed, and the driver drives away, so it's a hit and run case, and the chapter perspectives switch back and forth between the grieving mother and the detectives who are working on the case. I'm not sure if any other perspectives are going to come into it. Like I said, I'm only 30 pages in, so I don't know if it only follows the investigation or if there's some more thriller mystery aspect to it to come into it. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. My mom and grandma both read it and loved it, and we generally like the same kind of thrillers, so hopefully I can at least get through a big chunk of this over the next couple days before the end of the month, and I will let you know in March how it goes. So that is my February wrap-up. Let me know down below if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, and I will see you all in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye guys.